Hi everyone, this is UrantianArtist welcoming you to a podcast that will be on my UrantianArtist channel. Today we're sharing our 12th podcast, which will be about the mansion worlds. The Creator's Son, when on Urantia, spoke of the many mansions in the Father's universe. In a certain sense, all 56 of the encircling worlds of Jerusalem are devoted to the transitional culture of ascending mortals. But the 7 satellites of world number 1, or more specifically known as the mansion worlds, that is in 4701. May I introduce my associate, Callie?
UrantianArtist, thank you for having me here. In paper 47, it says, on the mansion world, the resurrected mortal survivors resume their lives just where they left off when overtaken by death. When you go from Urantia to the first mansion world, you will notice considerable change. But if you had come from a more normal and progressive sphere of time, you would hardly notice the difference, except for the fact that you were in possession of a different body. The tabernacle of flesh and blood has been left behind on the world of nativity. And then it goes on to say that the very center of all activities on the first mansion world is the resurrection hall, the enormous temple of personality assembly. This gigantic structure consists of the central rendezvous of the seraphic destiny guardians, the thought adjusters, and the archangels of the resurrection. The life carriers also function with these celestial beings in the resurrection of the dead. From the temple of the new life there extend 7 radial wings. The resurrection halls of the mortal races of each these structures is devoted to the assembly of one of the 7 races of time. There are 100,000 personal resurrection chambers in each of these 7 wings, terminating in the circular class assembly halls, which serve as the awakening chambers for as many as 1,000,000 individuals. These halls are surrounded by the personality assembly chambers of the blended races of the normal post-Adamic worlds. Regardless of the technique which may be employed by the individual worlds of time in connection with special or dispensational resurrections, the real and conscious reassembly of actual and complete personality takes place in the resurrection halls of Mansonia number 1. Throughout all eternity you will recall the profound memory impressions of your first witnessing of these resurrection mornings. From the resurrection halls you proceed to the Melchizedek sector, where you are assigned permanent residence. Then you will enter upon 10 days of personal liberty. You are free to explore the immediate vicinity of your new home and to familiarize yourself with the program which lies immediately ahead. You also have time to gratify your desire to consult the registry and call upon your loved ones and other earth friends who you may have preceded you to these worlds. At the end of your 10-day period of leisure, you begin the second step in the paradise journey. For the mansion worlds are actual training spheres, not merely detention planets.
Thank you, Callie, for telling us about some significant facts about the first mansion world. And now let me share some things about the second mansion world. It is on this sphere that you're more fully inducted into the Mansonia life. The groupings of the Urantia life begin to take form. Working groups and social organizations start to function. Communities take on formal proportions, and the advancing mortals inaugurate new social orders and governmental arrangements. Now, your adjuster memory remains fully intact as you ascend the Urantia life. Those mental associations that were purely animalistic and holy material naturally perish with the physical brain. But everything in your mental life which was worthwhile and which had survival value was counterparted by the adjuster and is retained as a part of personal memory all the way through the ascendant career. You will be conscious of all your worthwhile experiences as you advance from one mansion world to another and from one section of the universe to another, even to paradise. And this is such an interesting thing. Though you have Urantia bodies, you continue through all 7 of these worlds to eat, drink, and rest. You partake of the Urantia order of food, a kingdom of living energy unknown on the material worlds. Both food and water are fully utilized in the mortal body. There is no residual waste. Pause to consider. Mansion number 1 is a very material sphere, presenting the early beginnings of the Urantia regime. You're still a near human and not far removed from the limited viewpoints of mortal life, but each world discloses definite progress. From sphere to sphere, you grow less material, more intellectual, and slightly more spiritual. The spiritual progress is greatest on the last 3 of these 7 progressive worlds. And another interesting thing is that biological deficiencies were largely made up on the first mansion world. Their defects in planetary experiences pertaining to sex life, family association, and parental function were either corrected or were projected for future rectification among the material sun families on Jerusalem. Mansion World 2, more specifically, provides for the removal of all phases of intellectual conflict and for the cure of all varieties of mental disharmony. The effort to master the significance of Urantia Moda began on the first mansion world is here more earnestly continued.
On the third mansion world, the chief purpose of this training is to enhance the understanding of the correlation of the Urantia Mota and the mortal logic, the coordination of the Urantia Mota and the human philosophy. Surviving mortals now gain practical insight into true metaphysics. This is the real introduction into the intelligent comprehension of cosmic meanings and universe interrelationships.
I will now share about the fourth mansion world. The individual ascender more fittingly finds his place in the group working and class functions of the Urantia life. Ascenders here develop increased appreciation of the broadcasts and other phases of local universe culture and progress. It is during the period of training on world number 4 that the ascending mortals are really first introduced to the demands and delights of the true social life of Urantia creatures. And it is indeed a new experience for evolutionary creatures to participate in social activities which are predicated neither on personal aggrandizement nor on self-seeking conquest. A new social order is being introduced, one based on the understanding sympathy of mutual appreciation, the unselfish love of mutual service, and the overmastering motivation of the realization of a common and supreme destiny, the paradisic goal of worshipful and divine perfection. Ascenders are all becoming self-conscious of God knowing, God revealing, God seeking, and God finding.
On the fifth mansion world, having mastered the local universe language before leaving the fourth mansion world, you now devote more time to the perfection of the tongue of Uversa, to the end that you may be proficient in both languages before arriving on Jerusalem with residential status. All ascending mortals are bilingual from the system headquarters up to Havana, and then it is only necessary to enlarge the super-universe vocabulary, still additional enlargement being required for residence on Paradise. A real birth of cosmic consciousness takes place on Mansonia number 5. You are becoming universe-minded. This is indeed a time of expanding horizons. It is beginning to dawn upon the enlarging minds of the ascending mortals that some stupendous and magnificent, some supernal and divine, destiny awaits all who complete the progressive paradise ascension, which has been so laboriously but so joyfully and auspiciously begun. At about this point, the average mortal ascender begins to manifest bona fide experiential enthusiasm for Havana ascent. Study is becoming voluntary, unselfish, service natural, and worship spontaneous. A real Urantia character is budding. A real Urantia creature is evolving.
Oh, that's good. Mansion World number 6. This is a brilliant age for ascending mortals and usually witnesses the perfect fusion of the human mind and the divine adjuster. In potential, this fusion may have occurred previously, but the actual working identity many times is not achieved until the time of the sojourn on the fifth mansion world or even the sixth. Now, the union of the evolving immortal soul with the eternal and divine adjuster is signalized by the seraphic summoning of the supervising super angel for resurrected survivors and of the archangel of record for those going to judgment on the third day. And then, in the presence of such a survivor's Urantia associates, these messengers of confirmation speak, quote, "This is a beloved son in whom I am well pleased." This simple ceremony marks the entrance of an ascending mortal upon the eternal career of paradise service. Now, immediately upon the confirmation of adjuster fusion, the new Urantia being is introduced to his fellows for the first time by his new name and is granted the 40 days of spiritual retirement from all routine activities, wherein to commune with himself and to choose some one of the optional routes to Havana and to select from the differential techniques of paradise attainment. But still are these brilliant beings more or less material. They are far from being true spirits. They are more like supermortals, spiritually speaking, still a little lower than the angels, but they are truly becoming marvelous creatures. You are becoming more and more adorable as you leave behind the coarse vestiges of planetary animal origin. Then it says something very important. Coming up through great tribulation serves to make glorified mortals very kind and understanding, very sympathetic and tolerant.
Next, we have the seventh mansion world. While sojourning on the Mansonia number 7, permission is granted to visit Transition World number 7, the world of the Universal Father. Here you begin a new and more spiritual worship of the Unseen Father, a habit you will increasingly pursue all the way up through your long ascending career. You will find the Father's temple on this world of transitional culture, but you do not see the Father. An ascender may elect to tarry on the seventh mansion world for the purpose of enabling a tardy member of his earthly or Mansonia working group to catch up with him. The personnel of the seventh Mansonia assemble on the Sea of Glass to witness your departure for Jerusalem with residential status. You will greatly enjoy your progress through the seven dematerializing worlds. They are really demortalizing spheres. You are mostly human on the first mansion world, just a mortal being minus a material body. A human mind housed in a Urantia form. A material body in the Urantia world, but not a mortal house of flesh and blood. You really pass from the mortal state to the immortal status of the time of adjuster fusion, and by the time you have finished the Jerusalem career, you will be full-fledged Urantians.
Now, after the seventh mansion world, we will, in a sense, graduate to be able to go to Jerusalem, which is the capital of our local system. And John the Revelator saw a vision of the arrival of a class of advancing mortals from the seventh mansion world to their first heaven, the glories of Jerusalem. He recorded, "And I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire, and those who had gained the victory over the beast that was originally in them, and over the image that persisted through the mansion worlds, and finally over the last mark and trace, standing on the sea of glass, having the harps of God, and singing the song of deliverance from mortal fear and death." And then in parentheses it said, "Perfected space communication is to be had on all these worlds, and your everywhere reception of such communication is made possible by carrying the harp of God, a Urantia contrivance compensating for the inability to directly adjust the immature Urantia sensory mechanism to the reception of space communications." And somehow I have had this thought in my mind that maybe the harp of God is like our iPhones that we carry around. We can listen to music and everything. And it was just a, a humorous thought, okay? The Urantia form granted you on departure from the mansion world career is such as will see you through to the end of the local universe experience. Changes will be made from time to time, but you will retain the same form until you bid it farewell when you emerge as first stage spirits preparatory for transit to the super universe worlds of ascending culture and spirit training. The mortal personality initiated on the evolutionary worlds and tabernacled in the flesh, indwelt by the mystery monitors and invested by the spirit of truth, is not fully mobilized, realized, and unified until the day when such a Jerusalem citizen is given clearance for Urantia and proclaimed a true member of the Urantia Corps of Nebadon, an immortal survivor of a juster association, a paradise ascender, a personality of Urantia status, and a true child of the Most High. Mortal death is a technique of escape from the material life in the flesh, and the Mansonia experience of progressive life through 7 worlds of corrective training and cultural education represents the introduction of mortal survivors to the Urantia career. the transition life which intervenes between the evolutionary material existence and the higher spirit attainment of the ascenders of time who are destined to achieve the portals of eternity.
UrantianArtist, thank you for reading that. You know, it's so interesting as we were going through one by one the different mansion worlds, you know, from the first one even, say, when they were saying how you could, if you didn't have children, for example, that you could watch Adam and Eve's children as training in the nurseries. I think that's so, it's really cool actually, don't you think, UrantianArtist, to be watching Adam and Eve's kids?
And of course they call them material sons and daughters.
Yeah, right.
In the book.
So amazing. And then I think you were reading it when you said about how the Urantia body, how, you know, it keeps advancing, the form advances from one world to another. When you said you go to sleep with the seraphic transport and awake with the new undeveloped body. It's so amazing what keeps happening.
Does it use the word like keying you up?
Yes, I believe it does.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You're keyed up.
Exactly. And what else was so, I mean, everything was so interesting. How you're saying that you still eat and drink and rest.
Yes.
I can't wait to see what is this Urantia order of food.
Right.
It says it's a kingdom of living energy unknown on the material world.
Right.
Sounds delicious.
And I look forward to seeing the homes that we live in, because they are going to be without any roof, because there's no storms and so forth there, and we don't need it. And each one we can have a part in designing it. We can,
designing the areas in which we're living.
Yes,
and
that we can have a part in that, and so I look forward to that. And then when they tell about the colors of the vegetation there, how I think it's like a lavender orchid.
Like violets?
Yes, like violets.
Violet hues.
As well as some of the green.
Yes.
But that's going to be a primary color.
You're just going to see like violet, maybe mountains, or I don't even know.
Oh. It might be like in China, there's a place where the mountains are all different colors of rock and so forth. And I think, okay, maybe that's sort of how it's going to be.
Yeah, maybe it's going to be incredible like that.
Yeah, be very colorful.
And the other part that was really great to me is how it was talking about the language.
Oh, yes.
The local universe language it will be the tongue of your versa. And that will be proficient in both languages. And that will be bilingual from the system headquarters up to Havana. I can't wait to learn this language. UrantianArtist. Are you going to help me learn it?
Well,
I have a hard time with language.
I hope somebody will help me learn it.
Okay, well, after you learn it, you have to promise to teach me it.
I haven't learned the language, any language.
I'm still learning English.
I tried to learn Chinese and Mandarin, and that was really hard.
And yet you succeeded there.
Yeah.
Also, the other parts that are so amazing is just like how, as your form is changing, your consciousness is also growing with you, and your knowledge of just all of these things that they were speaking about. It sounds like a true, more than awakening. It's just, like you said, being so keyed up so many different times.
It's like a real transitional experience of spirituality.
But what I love is that when we're there and when we awaken on the mansion world, how our personality and our outward form really are more aligned with who we are, for example. So in other
Oh,
words,
yeah.
like here on Earth, you know how they have the parables of the wolf in sheep's clothing. In other words, there, that's not possible.
Yeah, right.
You know, you
And,
are on the inside what you are on the outside. There, isn't that
that's
more
right.
of a?
It says that, doesn't it? And about that, here on Earth, you might be very beautiful on the outside, but not
Inwardly,
inside.
right.
Yeah, but
Just
it
speaking
says,
about when Jesus said about the cup, you know,
oh, yes.
you
Yes.
want to wash the outside of the cup so much.
Yeah.
What about the inside of the cup?
Yes, that's right. And in the mansion worlds, we will, if we've lived a beautiful life, we will be beautiful. That's beautiful and reassuring.
Yeah, it is.
For us to
Absolutely.
know. And yet we will be recognized by our loved ones. We
By
will.
a personality.
Yeah. That's right.
Everyone better recognize me. Another great part was when we were saying about, the vision that John saw.
Oh, yes.
It's really beautiful to, because he was trying his best to convey. I mean, think about when he was alive on this earth.
Yes.
This is the time of Jesus,
Uh-huh.
and here he saw this amazing,
Right.
like, I don't even know what he saw. It must be like a billion times more than I could imagine.
I mean, like, we get a glimpse of it now, of sort of seeing, because the Revelation tells us. But back then, I mean, he was really, would have to have been struggling with words to describe
Right, how do you describe everything? And I think he did so well.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes,
he said
he
the
did.
sea of glass mingled with fire. And those who gained the victory. Wow, it's just like so amazing, standing in the sea of glass, having the harps of God.
I know.
Oh my gosh, I felt something when you were reading that, and I think it's so amazing, this communication devices that they have there, and I'm sure it's better than any device we have here.
Yes,
it's designed from Christ Michael and his team.
That's right.
It must be amazing. Moving on through UrantianArtist, just coming to the realization that when we go to the next step, that we're still going to have the mind. In other words, we're not going into perfection when we go to the next step. That's not how Heavenly Father has created the plan.
Okay.
Right? If he wanted to make perfected beings, he makes them right away.
All right.
And so the beautiful part of the plan that we're in, that he's created for us, is that we get to have this experience through time. And even when we get there, we're continuing to learn and continuing to progress, but now we get to learn from celestial beings and Heavenly Father and Jesus.
Right. Oh, that is beautiful.
It's going to be amazing.
And I did read in some place that we will have a chance to have large groups of people where we can hear a conference with Christ Michael talking. And that is going to be, I thought, oh, that's a conference I don't want to miss.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Also, just the last part that I wanted to touch on is the part where it says that, you could look up on the registry.
Oh, yes.
See your loved ones, and I know that's going to be the number one thing that we all do when we get there.
Right. Thank you, Callie, for sharing your insights and being my associate. I desire to end this with some personal words to each of you who have viewed our podcasts. Thank you for watching each of the episodes and to each of you who have left such positive comments. We invite you to each share personal insights about our Mansion World training. Aloha nui loa to all.